Like,
Welcome to the Pivot Point podcast, Strategy for Change. Today, we're diving into one of my favorite kinds of stories, the kind that reminds us that change doesn't always come easy, but it can redefine everything about how we live and lead. My guest today is Robert Esposito, the driving force behind U.S. Relocators, a company that's helped countless people move their lives, not just their furniture. But what I find even more inspiring about Robert's story of movement and transformation is, like so many of us, he hit a point where something had to shift, where the way things were just weren't working anymore. And it was in that moment that he began to see his life work and purpose in a completely new way. Robert, thank you for joining me. I'm really looking forward to hearing about your pivot point in your life, that moment that changed your direction, and maybe even how you saw yourself. So let's start right there. When you think back over your journey, what was that moment that really became a pivot point for you?
thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here. I think the biggest moment for me that was a pivot point was when I realized I would write the book, and it was to help people, but it was one of those things where, like, my partner, I had done like a TED Talk, a public speaking event, and my partner was inquiring why I was doing it. And I said something to him that, maybe I can only say to him or a few other people. I said, I'm not sure yet, but, I'm sure I'll know in the future. And when I said it, he said, what do you like, want to be an author or something? And I was like, no way. And I'm not one to lie, but it was like my brain said something that my body rejected. And I was just like it totally made me think, like, wait, did I just lie to him? I don't lie to him. And I didn't lie, but I guess subconsciously, thinking about it now, it was an untruth.
So essentially, you had a mindset that kind of shifted. So there was a
Yes.
cognitive shift. Where were you back then in your life? Like, you a young adult, midlife? Where was that as far as your time in life?
That was recent. That was the last 2-3 years when I decided to write Nobody Move. I guess you could say I had many over my career, but when I was younger, I made a huge decision not to go into like the local 3 electrical union when I had the opportunity, and instead I borrowed $4,000. I bought a box truck. People thought I was a genius for doing that, but it turned out well for me, so thankfully.
Yeah. So what was it like with people around you? And were you getting support, or were you getting resistance or reaction? Were you in this alone? Was this vision yours? Did others see it? Because that's what tends to happen to people. A lot of listeners will be able to be inspired, obviously, from hearing some of the things that you might have gone through, maybe some self-doubt, some frustration, some fear. If you can
Yeah.
encapsulate some of that, like what was going on at that time that made a difference for you to do what you did?
So as far as my career went, I had thankfully reached a place where I was comfortable, and, I didn't feel that like ego pressure to keep building. I had built beyond, although I always dreamed of no limit, I had built beyond the place that I ever thought I would actually be. And I'm not going to say I wasn't excited anymore, but that like hunger and passion maybe not there. And I was looking around at the industry, and I saw some pain points that I wanted to address that weren't being addressed. And I wanted to put a voice to them. And if it was only for my clientele and it was on a small level, I was doing it for me, and nobody really kind of paid attention to it in the very beginning. And what happened was another moment. I had went out to lunch like 3 weeks before I was self-publishing it, and a chance lunch the next day, the guy I was at lunch with surprised me and said, he had talked to somebody, which wound up leading to like a book deal and a movement. So it kind of was like, once the momentum got behind it, then it's just been absolute focus and passion from there.
That's impressive, because not many people are ready to self-reflect and then train or teach others about what their journey was like. And then there's a lot in it, and listening to your book and hearing some of the things that you've gone through in your life, it seems like you've been through a lot. Is there anything that stands out that would be really inspiring for others to hear?
I've always paid attention to what's going on in my life. And I kind of joke that, like, if, in my late childhood, early teens, I was wise beyond my years. By my mid-20s, I was like in that senior stage where I had lost a lot of my close friends. And one stands out. The first one that died tragically. And for me, like there was a lot of people involved in that that were at the scene when it happened, and others that were 15 minutes away, which I was. And all of the people that were there passed away within 10 years, and all the others are extremely successful. So it was almost like that moment made a rip in people. You don't have to like, you can approach your risks with a little bit more intensity than others. And I think the people that were there were so affected that they just couldn't get over it.
Yeah, so you've really built a strong reputation in your field, and behind every success story, there's usually a very human turning point. Is there a time when you can take us back to in your life where things shifted with your own personal growth that you noticed started to change, and how you approached your work and what you needed to do for your work?
When I started my work, my mother had one of Long Island's first estate sale companies, and she had founded it because my nana got cancer and she had to clean out her house and move her to Long Island. And I saw in helping her that the industry was fragmented. And I thought maybe that would be a great business to help people. And my goal was always to help people. In the beginning, I would marvel at what the people had, and it was such a different lifestyle than I was used to. And for better or for worse, it gave me a good visual of like what I wanted and things I didn't want. And I think somewhere within that, I saw that like there's a human element, no matter what walk of life you're coming from, that we all go through and nobody's talking about. And the more I would speak on that and talk about my industry from a different perspective, from that perspective, the response I get would make me go more into it. And the great part about that is it's still happening all day, every day right now, and there's things we're coming up with and concepts that like we know are there, but we don't have them. And then all of a sudden they click, and I revel in that space.
That says a lot. I know change is fascinating on how we stumble into things. And it sounds like with what happened in your life with your nana, with your mom, and the shift that had an impact on you. What were the driving forces that brought you to that decision?
I think from the earliest memory, I always had that like hunger for control and like hunger for like more. Although I wouldn't say like I'm somebody who puts the financial reward at the forefront, because I don't even believe in that in business. Although it's most important, it can never be the driving force. I don't think accountants make things pretty. So I don't think that can be the main focus, but I always had that like hunger in me. And I always had that control, like I needed to control my destiny. And that's what sprung me into business. And I think later on, it just developed more and more as I saw success with it. Or even when I didn't see success, I was able to like forge through it.
So what about that moment back then when there weren't things that were succeeding for you? It sounds like you have a significant amount of grit that just you kept on driving yourself. What was driving you so much? I understand you wanted to be in business on your own. You want to make those decisions on your own. You want to take the last shot of the game. What more can you tell us about for someone who's really hesitant now about going out on their own?
I would look at this. I would look at the whole picture. I think people see a barrier and they get stuck in that barrier. And as we age and we become, the decades go on, you become stuck in grooves. And for me, like, I think the whole book thing was a new revelation. Like, no, I can take this so much further. And like, there's no limit to where I can go with this or how I can dig into it. And if I'm helping people on a logistical level and I'm helping them move from one house to another and they're thanking me for that, the idea that now they're thanking me for like, they couldn't have got through this without me from like an author standpoint. Well, that's like such a bigger, rewarding feeling than the initial, and that there's always going to be more. So you see the barrier, but if you look at the whole picture and you look back, you can see that like yesterday you were more successful than the day before, or you're doing better this year than you are last year. So you can't just look at what's in front of you. You got to look at what's behind you too and see how those dots are lining up and connecting.
I'm always fascinated when I was listening to your book about the different stories. Were there any things that stood out where you helped someone move who clearly wasn't ready to leave? And what did it teach you about the timing for them and the grief that they had, or the decision, the whole process? How did that move you when you encounter someone like that?
That's a good question. There's
because I'm always interested in the
Mhm.
intrapsychic, right? The whole
Yeah,
internal decision, and then there's a behavior that manifests afterwards. But your clock ticks, your mind thinks, your emotions pick up, and then you act, and you're a man of action. So, but you also react, right? You react to what you're getting, and then you've got to be more proactive and put it out there. So when you're seeing someone that push and
absolutely.
pull, that approach avoidance, where someone, they know they want this, but they're afraid. They might be a hoarder, and then they're being pushed by others, and they don't want to give up. You've talked a little bit about. Just tell us about that.
Yeah, and I think you said it there with the push and pull and the proactive. Think first of all, I don't think 90% of the people are ready to move when they have to move on just a simple level, but we're obviously talking on an emotional level. The one story that sticks out the most is I was hired by this real estate lawyer to move a young adult. He was in his early 20s, and his parents had just passed away months ago, both of them. And I remember thinking it was a very sad situation driving there because I was in my 20s. I was in my late 20s. I was probably first few years of the business. And he met us outside, and I said what's up to him as if he was a peer of mine because we looked like peers at the time. And my heart went out to him then, but it's like one of those things where I feel bad for you because your mother has cancer, but I don't really know what it feels like for your mother to have cancer. I don't have that set of emotions. I'm not experiencing that with you. And I just feel bad on a superficial level. But I remember walking through the door and he had two dogs. And at that moment, all three of us realized that in the last few months since his parents left, he probably hasn't taken the dogs out. Like they've been using the bathroom in the house the time. And just seeing like that level of like grief where like he's lost all humanity, this kid, and understanding that like what we're doing is so dramatic to him and he's keeping a straight face to whether it's look cool or, you know, make sure, that like he's not making it uncomfortable for us because we're just doing what we had to do there. And he appreciates us. Like, like you said, push pull. It makes you think like,
Yeah, that's the approach avoidance, we call it. Yeah.
yeah,
You approach, but
exactly.
you're avoiding what you need to do. Yeah.
And then you start thinking, how do I make sure I set up people? And we all don't think about the things, how we set up our loved ones. We don't think about that in our daily life.
How has writing the book changed the way you live or the way you move people today?
It changes how the level of situation I look at every person more than anything. Like always was somebody who was like fascinated by the human condition and a people watcher and trying to understand how people do what they do, but that's gotten so much more passion and so much more at the forefront of the way I handle a situation or look at a situation because I really try to delve into like why is this happening and what is causing it and what are they really going through. And it definitely makes me take like a higher level approach to handling a situation for people where I'm trying to help them.
So you have more empathy, is what you're saying, and
I guess
and
empathy
you're
is the
more in
best
touch, yeah,
word.
which
Yes,
is wonderful.
absolutely.
So many people listening might be in a place of knowing that they need to change, but still feel stuck. What have you learned about what finally pushes someone to act? Like, is there an emotional reaction someone has? Or is there, I know you talk about the reasons, the stressors in life, it's so
Death, divorce, mourning. Yeah.
yeah.
I think you gotta, it's almost like, are we ran by fate or do you choose your fate? It's either attraction or it's the force is pushing you and you got to decide like how you want to live. Are you going to live on life's terms or are you going to do what you can to create your own terms?
That's fascinating. So, if you were able to talk to the younger you many years ago that might have been held back for some reason, inhibited, what would you recommend? What would you tell that younger you now that you had all the experience? If you had an opportunity to educate and to guide yourself,
I think the biggest thing would be to obviously educate yourself. I'm not saying like on a school level, on a self-education level as much as possible. And your gut. I think people are hesitant
trust
to
your,
rely on their gut. Yeah, because it's always right. It always knows before you know. And you waste so much time, you know, making sure, but really, the whole time.
That's an important aspect there. I'm glad you mentioned that. What did you learn about yourself that you didn't know before from years ago? What did you learn about yourself in even writing the book or reflecting on your life? Because here you are, you're presenting what you do. It's so informative and instructional for everyone.
I
What did you learn about yourself that you didn't expect to?
There's things I talk about that, like, I don't think people talk about. I don't think they go to the dinner table or like go out with their friends and talk about like what they're really going through. And that's scary because they could so benefit from hearing each other, like in all aspects of life where you go to like a support group, but the moving or clearing out your family home, like those emotions don't come up at the party. And I realized by hearing other people talk about like my emotional intelligence or my empathy, like you said before, like funny or not, I'm used to hearing against my emotional intelligence. And now people are like, praising me
Yeah,
for
stay
it.
with your emotion. Yeah. Go
Yeah,
with your gut. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, of course.
So
Yeah.
it's pretty eye-opening for me to hear that.
Was there a moment when your work and your personal growth kind of intersected where you changed how you do business, where personally and then professionally you kind of said, I need to make a pivot. I need to make a change here.
There were multiple times, I think, going from actually physically working to saying like, hey, I could save, $150 by working today, but I'll lose X amount of dollars not going on the estimate. But now again, with the book, like personally, I have to, too much is given, too much is expected. And I have to approach situations from a perspective of somebody that's not just looking at the situational relevance for my business that I'm operating, but on a humanities level for the person I'm trying to be, because I believe that what I'm doing is such a cultural shifting conversation. And I want to be at the forefront of that. And I want to take that as far as I can to help people on that level. And I have to be conscious of that when I'm in situations. And I
No,
am
you
very
certainly
conscious.
take a great deal of pride in the work that you do. What kind of a profile makes a good leader like you are? What would be an important aspect for someone to have if you were to mentor someone who was looking to go out on their own? What are there any particular qualities that you would recommend that they take a look at or take the initiative?
Yes. I mean, I think not having ignorance and having understanding is one of the most important things, not burning bridges.
Mm.
I think ultimately, like the greatest business owners are the visionaries and the enforcers, the ones who are doing it and, are imagining it. But I think most of all, taking advice from everybody, whether it's good or bad, is the most important thing. And you can sit and take advice from somebody where you want nothing they're telling you, but advise yourself on what not to do, and being able to differentiate that is very important.
If you can, because you're a manager, you're an owner, but you are seriously a leader of people because you have a crew. They've got to do their work. You've got to inspire. You've got to motivate, right? So, what differences have you seen in our youth, the Gen Z or the millennial kids, and how different do you have to be? Because you're a baby, you're a Gen X person like me, and you were probably raised by a baby boomer. And what's that like now for you to manage and lead the young people who might have a different mentality or mindset?
Um, there's times where I have a lot, like I'll have managers come in and talk to me about the way I've talked to someone when I think I'm just talking to them and they're crying because of the way I talked and I'm
Hmm.
not even upset. Like,
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
like, what are you talking about? I was just saying, no, don't do it like this, do it like this. Like, but the way I
Was it the
talk,
tone or the
yeah,
inflection and yeah,
or
and your
my
what we call yeah,
personality or my
yeah,
passion, and I'm busy and I'm doing it, I'm stopping to help you, and you're intimidated by the way I'm talking, and I think I'm helping you. I think we're like great.
yeah.
But at the same time, I'm actually fascinated about like us, like our generation in society. Like there's a joke like I put out on New Year's, like, another year of like raising our parents and raising our children. Like we're just in that middle where like we're half technology, half not technology. We
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
relate to everybody
yeah.
and we could kind of handle anything, but like, it's a real unique position to be in. I don't think every generation has been like that. I don't think, I think we're a unique generation right
Yeah. As far as the way we all grew up, we grew up without the devices, then we had the devices as we were growing up, and then we
now.
still had the
Yes,
old school mentality. My father was from the greatest generation. He was born in 1909. So basically, he was like 58 when he had me. Same parents. I have an older
exactly.
sister. So, he was a very silent person who worked a lot. So I didn't see much of him. So, there's a different, nowadays people are more involved, actively involved. And I think there's been a big shift in how the youth react to certain tone and the paraverbal communication, how you say what you say and where you're coming from. And they get a little bit shaken. So I was just curious about if you've noticed that in the people that you work for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what their priorities are.
Yeah. And how they react. So take us back just for a moment. Were you imagining that when you started this out, the moving itself, did you imagine you'd be where you are right now and doing the whole relocating as well as moving and all the other things that you've gone through and having as a large enough business that you have right now, the trucks and and the people and the employees? What did you imagine? I mean, were you going to be were you imagining being more like a solo guy and smaller?
No, I think if you look at the first business plan on September 25th, 08, the day I started, it's like a yellow piece of paper. It's hanging right above me. And it says
Right. So
like,
you use that as motivation, I guess.
start small, have a big fleet. Like that's where I was at. Like I knew that the industry was a good industry in the fact that like having a bunch of services that kind of are a one-stop shop would be good. And I thought I could take that really far. I had tried to branch out. I tried to franchise like 10 years ago. I realized that I needed a more personal approach and I'd want to do it more on a partnership level. So I stopped that. I pivoted right away
Hmm.
because this is such a personal business. And now with AI, I think even more so, it's going to be forever than ever. But I'll tell you what, I dreamed of it. Maybe I didn't believe it would happen, but I didn't believe the stuff now. I studied acting for a couple of years and I wrote in my teens and I had completely forgot about that. And it's like looking at it and it's like almost like, wait, borrowing $4,000 to buy a box truck to start a moving company has brought me back there. Like that makes zero sense without even remembering it, without even saying like, I'm going to do this to go there. Like I didn't think of that at all. And that's what I was saying before with the moment. So like seeing how the path brought me to here where I'll like host an event or speak or be on your podcast, like, or write a book, like that's amazing to me. You know what I mean? Like that's like not in a million years could I have expected.
And what's the emotional reaction you get?
Excitement, enthusiasm.
Yeah. I can see your excitement and your passion. You're highly sought after. People are impressed with you. They're in awe of you at times. I've seen some of the things that you've done, and
Thank
it
you.
it really it's inspiring, which is why I thought you'd be a wonderful guest to really talk about the work that you've done. And
Appreciate it.
it sounds like at some point in your life, you were writing down your goals for the future without even realizing it and then living it.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it's like
Was that a
if you read,
conscious effort or was that just like an automatic subconscious one, like where you weren't thinking, you just did? See, that's your gut again, right?
yeah, and I think so. It starts out like this: you read The Secret or The Alchemist, and you put your $1 million check on your glass desk, like I had,
Nice.
and that's what you think is important, and you write that down, and then you go about it, and then it becomes a situation where you've lived it so much that all of a sudden it's like you see how you can move the universe and you see how you can make the waves shift. And then you start understanding it more. And that's when you're like, I'm not sure exactly, but I know enough to know I don't know. You know what I mean?
That's good.
And that's
You
how I feel.
recognize, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You've accepted that piece. So what will be your legacy?
I truly believe that, and you can say I am a crazy podcast guest, but I'm at a point where, like, I truly believe that Nobody Move is going to change society. And I hope that be the case. And it still stands on the principles and the values that it was created for, as if it's The whole concept is like, it's not cryogenics. We're not saying freeze until we find you a cure. We're saying just stop. Don't move. You need information before you proceed.
Yes.
And that's what we want to help to make a better professional and to create a better consumer, more educated.
In listening to your book, it covers just about you've covered every aspect of the move. And I know you mentioned that there are others out there, and clinicians included, therapists, that this is a therapeutic kind of tool for people. What one bit of information from your book is most important for people to really go out there and then need to get it before they make a move? Because you've really covered everything. What stands out for you that you feel is most important?
Two things, one I say all the time, really be three, but if you're clearing out your childhood home or the home you raise your children in, before anybody comes, videotape everything, because someday there might be somebody who would pay a small fortune to have that. And as a professional, as a real estate professional, you could be a hero for saying that. The other thing would be like, look at the moves in your life, because we all have to physically move, get a new apartment, transfer for a job, go through a divorce, good, bad, indifferent reasons. Look at all your physical moves as metaphors for your journey through life. And that's how I see them now, completely. I think you'll be more settled with going with it and dealing with whatever grief you're dealing with through the bad ones, because it's got to become a new beginning. Whether it's good or bad, it is a new beginning.
Very well said. I fully support that. That's wonderful advice for others. Before we break up, anything you want to tell us about yourself personally or your business that stands out, that's really something that you are proud of or want others to know?
For me, like, I've been in business 19 years. I understand how awards go, or like the Better Business Bureau, like with the book and stuff, like if you get an international book award, like that, to me, it doesn't mean anything. But now I'm seeing like a stranger approach and saying how it absolutely couldn't have gotten through whatever they were dealing with without it. And like, that is the space I want to live in. And I'm kind of playing right now with this concept of like living in a space where the imaginable that is undescribable becomes a reality, meaning like I'll think of an idea, I'll explain it to my marketing video genius, meme maker, and then I see him create it, and then it hits people, and I'm like, that is the greatest space to live in. Like,
Wow.
that's where I want to work,
That's wonderful. You have other plans down the road. I'm recalling you have other plans as far as other books to write, or is that still in the making? Or
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Full force.
And before we break up, what stands out then that you feel others would, if you give me one or two or three things, who want to start their own business and have that approach avoidance reaction where they want to, but they're nervous, they're afraid. They want success, but then they start sabotaging their success. And as a successful business person, as you are, and an amazing leader and an educator, really, with the books you've written, what can you tell someone who's really reluctant, but wants to, but is like waiting to just leap and fly, but they're nervous about that, things that are holding them back? What kind of one, two, or three things would you recommend?
So my initial plan to write a book was going to be a business book, and not that I felt like I qualified to write this big business book, but I wanted to address the person you're talking about that's like considering it. And because I see this all the time and I hear this all the time, like, oh, you'll hear the American dream is dead. And to me, that was like
Yeah.
so threatening and
Yes.
dangerous. Like, yeah, it might be harder, but like, are they really looking at the full picture? Because it's actually easier. Imagine if you had to look something up and you had to drive to a library and ask what the Dewey Decimal System
Yes,
is.
well said. Yes.
Like, look at it both ways. And I think the bigger part of that is know who's giving you the advice.
Yes.
Don't
Be critical.
don't let the naysayers, twist the way you're thinking about it.
Yeah, you're referring to, with regard to, because most of us are programmed to be cautious and careful and more negative, and we tend to be glass half empty. And you're trying to really emphasize that there are many opportunities out there, and be careful who you speak to. But speaking to someone like yourself who's been there, and this is what really drives what you're doing, and what I'm looking to bridge is to bring to listeners someone who's didn't give up, found what they wanted to do, followed their plan, pivoted along the way, had emotional struggle, had, of course, the economic struggle that goes on for the last 25 years. We're all familiar with that, kind of a recession and all the things that have happened. And there's a belief in oneself, right? And you certainly had that in yourself. And then there's blinders that we have to keep on our, like a horse running around the track. In order to win, you've got to ignore that negativity or those naysayers that are just going to bring you down. Were there any particular people that were positive, that were motivating and encouraging, either mentors or somebody that, even if it was a figure out in a public figure, anyone in your life?
Yeah, my one main job was I worked at Vincent's Clam Bar, which is like a extremely popular restaurant, and both owners were two brothers. They were absolute mentors. They would sit down with me if I asked questions, and even today, I'm actually partners with one of them. We own buildings together, and they've always just been a guiding principle and mentors, and also obviously like heavy into like audiobooks and like the Steve Jobs, Elon Musks of the world, and Shark Tank people and
Yes.
all that. But also just a local person that is in the local networking group. Like I've always fed off of them too. And, if I could take a piece of what everybody's doing good that I see, well, how powerful would I be? If I'm a piece of 100 people. And I think a big thing to say about what you're talking about right now and asking about is like, I've reached a point where I say something absolutely crazy and I don't get a big reaction because people believe it.
Yes. Yeah.
So on the outside, you think, okay, that resistance is gone. But I could tell you with nobody move, yes, I'll say something. And they're like, yeah, he's probably going to do it. Like they've seen it.
Because you have
already.
the credibility.
But the bigger like naysayer part and the bigger resistance does come. Like it comes in different ways than when you're just starting out. And it's
Right.
maybe smaller and it's an uncle telling you, well, why are you doing that? And
Yeah.
So it's always there.
Do you find family to be more negative or overprotective or reluctant or nervous for you over the years, or just,
Yes,
what
I
is it
do.
about that? Yeah. What do you think?
I think it's a gift and a curse. I think a part of it is they want to see you do your best, but they also want to, make sure you're not going too far. But there could also be jealousy or missed opportunity on their part. I think a lot of times people look at people and they say, something, oh, you can never do that, because it helps them feel more comfortable about what they didn't do in their life, and you got to think about that when
I'm glad you mentioned jealousy, because that's the impact that most people, when they're giving that advice, the one receiving it doesn't recognize it that way. But there might be a thread of jealousy there as well, even with close family.
Yeah, things definitely, you hear the circle get smaller and you're like, no, never. And you think you're the same, or you identify the same, but the world don't identify with you the same way. And that's like definitely a mind,
So I want to just get a better picture of the people from the restaurant that that are close now. What's it like sitting down with them and listening to them, and what impacts you emotionally when you listen to them?
I mean, I don't think they've ever given advice that was not absolute gold, and they still live by it today. I think it's a form of grounding because, now that like I'll work together with one of them, where the way they operate will take you down to reality, but in your best interest, that'll beam you right back up. Success.
So you feel really supported, and you have a high level of respect, admiration, and trust.
Absolutely.
That's the significant factor there. And
Absolutely.
You recognize that they're coming from a caring place,
Yeah,
supportive place.
I know paperwork's important, but at the same time, like, you don't ever want to be in a partnership if you need paperwork. If you can't just do it on a handshake, you shouldn't be partners to begin with. Stop the conversation. Of course, there might come time where the paperwork's necessary, but it can't be needed.
That's great. Robert Esposito,
Thank you.
Can't thank you enough.
Nick,
this has
a
been
pleasure.
A real wonderful learning experience for me, for our listeners, for the Pivot Point Strategy for Change podcast. I'm Nik Michael, and I'm looking forward to keeping in touch with you and really
too.
wanting to use the knowledge that you've provided us and really put it out there. And everything you've said is really just so important, I think, for us and for the people listening, for those listeners. So I can't thank you enough, my friend, and I look forward to hearing more great things from you, and to hearing more about some of the things you're going to be doing down the road. Perhaps we'll get together again and talk about the new things that you might be putting out, more books or anything else that you're hosting or things.
I would absolutely love to. Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Great. Thank you again. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
You too.